I want you to close your eyes for just a second. Picture a catalog, heavy, over 1,000 pages. It lands on your porch, and the whole family gathers around it. There's a refrigerator in there, a set of tools, maybe a winter coat, and if you were really lucky, there was even a house in that catalog. Your house, the one you'd actually live in. That catalog was Sears. And in 2026, the entire Sears empire has been reduced to 5 stores. 5 out of 3,500. And I'm going to tell you today that the internet didn't do that. Amazon didn't do that. One man and a hedge fund did. And what happened to Sears is happening again, right now, to a store you probably still walk into every single week. This is the story of the greatest corporate crime in American retail history, and it matters to every single person watching this channel. Let's get into it. To understand how Sears was destroyed, you first have to understand what it was. Because if you're under 50, there's a real chance you never truly knew this company at its peak. And even if you did shop there, you may not know the full picture of just how deeply Sears was woven into the fabric of this country. Back in the late 1800s, rural America had a serious problem. If you lived on a farm or in a small town, you were completely at the mercy of your local general store. That store owner knew you had no other options. No car, no highway, no way to get to the city. So he charged whatever he wanted. He was, for all practical purposes, a monopoly. One man controlling what your family could buy and what you'd pay for it. A young railway agent in Minnesota named Richard Sears saw this and decided to fix it. He started with a batch of watches nobody wanted, sold them by mail, made a profit, and from that tiny seed grew the most powerful retail operation the world had ever seen. By 1899, the Sears catalog was doing something that sounds almost unbelievable today. It was printing the wholesale prices that local store owners paid for their goods, right there in black and white. It was telling rural Americans exactly how badly their local merchants were ripping them off. The catalog called itself the consumer's advocate, and people trusted it completely. They called it the Farmer's Bible. By 1908, 1 out of every 5 Americans subscribed to that catalog. By 1927, it was going to 75 million people. Think about that number. There were only about 119 million Americans at the time. I've spent a lot of time looking at this history, and I'll be honest with you, this is the part that gets me every time. Because Sears didn't just sell things, Sears sold trust. When you ordered something from that catalog, the company guaranteed it. Satisfaction or your money back. No questions asked. That wasn't a marketing gimmick. That was a promise made to people who had very little money and couldn't afford to be wrong. Between 1900 and 1930, customers returned somewhere between 15 and 28% of everything they bought on credit from Sears. And Sears honored every single return. Every one. That kind of reliability built something over 100 years that you simply cannot fake or manufacture overnight. It built a bond with the American family that was as real as the tools in the garage and the appliances in the kitchen. And then there were the houses. Between 1908 and 1942, Sears sold approximately 75,000 complete houses by mail order. You would sit at your kitchen table, flip through the catalog, pick a design, write a check, and wait. A few weeks later, a railroad boxcar would pull into your local depot. It was sealed with a red wax stamp, just like a personal letter, meant to be broken only by the owner. Inside that boxcar were over 10,000 pre-cut pieces of lumber, 20,000 cedar shakes, all the nails, all the paint, the plumbing fixtures, the electrical wiring, and even the doorknobs. Everything numbered and ready to be assembled. Sears even offered mortgages at a time when banks wouldn't give them to working people. The slogan was simple: give the kiddies a chance. And tens of thousands of families did exactly that. In 1973, Sears built the tallest building in the world in Chicago, the Sears Tower. At the time, the company employed more people than the population of some small countries. Craftsman tools, Kenmore appliances, Die-Hard batteries. These weren't just brand names, they were generational agreements. Your grandfather's Craftsman wrench, the Kenmore dishwasher that your mother used every single night, the die-hard battery that started your car on a January morning when nothing else would. If it broke, Sears fixed it or replaced it, period. Full stop. No forms, no receipts, no runaround. That is what was destroyed. And here's where the story turns dark. In the early 2000s, a hedge fund manager named Eddie Lampert acquired Kmart out of bankruptcy. He then orchestrated an $11.5 billion merger between Kmart and Sears, creating a new company called Sears Holdings. By 2013, Lampert had made himself the CEO. And this is where I want you to pay very close attention, because what happened next is one of the most calculated financial destructions in American business history. Lampert was not a merchant. He had no background in running stores. He didn't care about floor displays or customer service or what the lighting looked like in the appliance section. He looked at Sears and saw something completely different than a retailer. He saw a massive reservoir of trapped money, and he intended to drain every drop of it. The stores began to deteriorate almost immediately. Shelves went bare, lights broke and stayed broken for months. The floors looked tired. The service disappeared. Former executives who left the company said plainly that management had no love for the customers and no real intention of running a legitimate retail business. This was not neglect. It was a strategy. The worse the stores performed, the more justification there was to sell off the assets, and the assets were worth far more than the stores themselves. In 2015, Lampert pulled off one of the most audacious financial maneuvers you will ever hear about. He created a brand new real estate company called Seritage Growth Properties. Then he had Sears sell 235 of its best, most profitable company-owned stores directly to Seritage for $2.7 billion. But here's the part that should make your blood boil. Lampert's own hedge fund owned 43.5% of Seritage, and Lampert himself was its chairman. So Sears sold its own stores to a company that Lampert controlled. And then Sears was forced to pay rent every single month to stay in the same buildings it had owned free and clear just weeks before. Between 2015 and 2017 alone, Sears paid $349 million in rent back to Seritage. And when Sears eventually had to close a store, it owed massive termination fees to Seritage on top of that. At least $45 million in termination fees by early 2018. Let me say this as plainly as I possibly can. The CEO of Sears was simultaneously the landlord of Sears. He was collecting rent from a company that he was also running into the ground. It was the corporate equivalent of selling your family home to yourself and then charging your children rent to sleep in their own bedrooms. I've covered a lot of economic stories on this channel. This one genuinely stopped me cold when I first laid it all out, because it's not complicated. It's not buried in financial jargon. It's just theft, dressed up in legal paperwork. And if this is the kind of story you think more people need to hear, take 2 seconds and hit subscribe, because we've got more of these coming. And trust me, the Walgreens story we're building toward is going to hit even harder. But the real estate scheme was only part of it. As the stores bled cash and they lost over $11 billion between 2012 and 2017, Lampert needed to keep generating money to pay down the company's debt. A significant chunk of that debt, by the way, was owed directly back to his own hedge fund. So he started selling off the crown jewels. Craftsman Tools, 90 years of American manufacturing heritage, sold to Stanley Black & Decker in 2016 for $900 million. The brand that built America's garages, gone. Die-Hard Batteries, sold off to Advance Auto Parts in 2019. Land's End, spun off to a group that Lampert's fund largely controlled. Kenmore Appliances, the undisputed king of American kitchens for generations, put on the chopping block as well. Lampert even made a personal $400 million bid through his own hedge fund to buy Kenmore himself, selling off the company's most valuable pieces and, in some cases, buying them personally on the cheap. Where did all that money go? It did not go into fixing the stores. It did not go into building an online shopping platform. It did not go to the workers on the floor. It went to pay down the debt. The debt that was largely owed back to Eddie Lampert. here is what I think is the most important thing to understand about this entire story. The American public, and a lot of the media, blamed Amazon. They said, well, Sears just couldn't compete with the internet. That's the comfortable story, the one that doesn't point fingers at anyone specific. But it simply isn't true. Companies far smaller and far less resourced than Sears successfully built online businesses during that same period. Sears had the brand, it had the customer loyalty, it had the real estate, it had the supply chain. It had everything it needed to survive and thrive in the digital age. It just had leadership that wasn't trying to keep it alive. And it gets even worse inside the company itself. In 2008, Lampert introduced a management structure called SOAR, and it was inspired, openly and directly, by the philosophy of Ayn Rand. If you're not familiar, Rand believed that pure selfishness was a virtue, that people competing against each other with no cooperation and no central guidance was the highest form of economic organization. So Lampert took the entire Sears Corporation and broke it into more than 30 completely separate business units. Every department, apparel, tools, appliances, even human resources, even the IT department, every single one of them was required to operate as its own independent business. They each had their own president, their own board, their own profit and loss statement, and every manager's job and bonus depended entirely on their own unit's numbers, not the company's numbers, their unit's numbers. What happened next should surprise absolutely no one. The departments went to war with each other. The tools division and the appliances division fought over who got more space in the weekly ad circular. Managers started hoarding customer data and hiding strategies from other departments because sharing information might help a rival unit's numbers. If the apparel team needed something from IT, they had to pay IT out of their own budget, so most of the time, they just hired outside contractors instead, bleeding the company dry while perfectly good internal resources sat idle. Employees were so frustrated, they renamed the whole thing. They stopped calling it SOAR. They called it SOAR. And honestly, that says everything. And on the floor, the customer experienced all of this chaos firsthand. You might be looking for help finding the right size shoe, and you'd see an employee standing 10 feet away, doing nothing. But that employee worked for the hardware department. Helping you buy a shoe would not help their numbers. So they stood there and watched you walk out, and the sale was lost. And you went somewhere else, and you didn't come back. That happened millions of times, in thousands of stores, over more than a decade. More than 3,500 locations shuttered, 250,000 jobs eliminated, 250,000 Americans who had dedicated their careers to this company, many of them for decades, cast aside. Their pensions shortchanged, their futures upended, not because of Amazon, not because of the internet, because of what I honestly believe was the most reckless, most self-serving corporate strategy in the history of American retail. In October of 2018, Sears filed for bankruptcy. And even here, in what most people saw as a tragic ending, the financial engineering continued. Lampert formed a new company called Transform Holdco and purchased the remaining assets of Sears out of bankruptcy for $5.2 billion. But most of that wasn't cash. He used something called a credit bid, which allowed him to forgive the debt that Sears owed directly to his hedge fund in exchange for taking ownership of the physical remains of the company. Vendors, suppliers, small business owners who were owed money by Sears, many of them received pennies on the dollar. Meanwhile, American taxpayers, through the Federal Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation, were left holding over $1 billion in unfunded pension obligations for the workers who got left behind. Today, in 2026, 5 Sears stores remain open. 5 in Braintree, Massachusetts, Burbank, California, Concord, California, El Paso, Texas, and Orlando, Florida. Locals describe them as ghost towns. Flickering lights, empty aisles, outdated registers, and massive, echoing silence where the sounds of American family life used to be. The catalog that once reached 75 million Americans now doesn't exist at all. The Craftsman wrenches your grandfather trusted are made by a different company now. The Kenmore name still exists, but the quality that made it legendary is a memory. The die-hard battery is someone else's product. Everything that made Sears Sears has been sold, scattered, or simply left to rot. Now, here is the part of this story that I need you to sit with for a moment. Because this isn't just history. This is happening again, right now. Your neighborhood Walgreens is following the exact same playbook. In late 2025, a private equity firm called Sycamore Partners completed a buyout to take Walgreens private. And the strategy they are using has a name. It is called the PropCo OpCo split, property company, operating company. They are separating the real estate from the retail operation. They are selling off the buildings that Walgreens operates in. And then Walgreens is being forced to pay rent to stay in those same buildings. Sound familiar? It should, because that is word for word what Eddie Lampert did to Sears with Seritage in 2015. The numbers are staggering. Walgreens currently carries approximately $8 billion in regular corporate debt. But when you add in the lease obligations from these sale-leaseback arrangements, the total burden exceeds $30 billion. $30 billion. In the third quarter of their most recent reporting period, Walgreens generated just $53 million in operating income and paid $126 million in interest expenses. They are paying more than double in interest than they are earning in actual operations. That is not a struggling business. That is a business being slowly drained from the inside out, exactly the way Sears was drained. Walgreens has already announced the closure of approximately 1,200 stores by 2027, with 500 closing in the first year alone. Inside the stores that remain open, pharmacists are being asked to do the work of 3 people. Customers are waiting in lines that stretch out of the pharmacy department. The new ownership quietly eliminated 6 paid holidays for hourly workers in the immediate aftermath of the buyout. When the money starts flowing away from the operation, the workers are always the first ones to feel it. We saw this with Sears, and we're watching it happen again at Walgreens. Here is what I think matters most for the people watching this channel. You are not just a spectator to this story. When a Walgreens closes in your neighborhood, that's not just an inconvenience. For the millions of Americans on fixed incomes who depend on their local pharmacy for regular prescriptions, for blood pressure checks, for flu shots, for the kind of quick local healthcare that doesn't require a copay and a 45-minute drive, a Walgreens closure is a genuine health crisis. It's a pharmacy desert, and it's coming to communities all across this country, driven by the same financial engineering that turned Sears from the backbone of the American dream into 5 empty stores in half-empty malls. The story of Sears is ultimately a story about trust. A company that spent over 100 years earning the deep personal trust of the American middle class. Your grandparents trusted Sears. Your parents trusted Sears. You may have trusted Sears. That trust was built slowly, carefully, promise by promise, refund by refund, craftsman wrench by craftsman wrench. And it was destroyed in about 15 years by one man who never cared about any of it, who looked at 100 years of American loyalty and saw only a balance sheet to be liquidated. The most dangerous thing happening in American business right now is not inflation. It's not interest rates. It's the way that private equity firms are buying up beloved American institutions, stripping their assets, loading them with debt, collecting their fees, and walking away, and leaving the workers, the customers, and the communities to sort through the wreckage. We watched it happen to Sears. We're watching it happen to Walgreens. And unless more people understand how this playbook works, we're going to keep watching it happen over and over again. Your grandfather's craftsman wrench is probably still in the garage. Still works. Probably always will. Because it was built by people who actually cared whether it held up. That's the Sears that was taken from you. And understanding exactly how it was taken is the first step toward recognizing when it's happening again. Have you watched a store that meant something to you disappear over the last few years? Was it Sears? Was it a Walgreens? Was it something else in your town that used to be a fixture and just isn't there anymore? I want to hear your story. Drop it in the comments below. I read every single one. and your experience matters a lot more than any spreadsheet ever will. If this channel is where you come to make sense of what's happening to your money and your community, subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. We're just getting started. This is EconoNova. Stay sharp.